documents on the screen. So let me just start with Thorkil Sonne. Thorkil Sonne is the founder of Specialisterne Denmark. He founded it in 2004. And the Specialisterne Foundation in 2008. I've already mentioned Specialisterne in my opening remarks before you arrived, Thorkil, actually SAP and JoyDew as well. So Thorkil has done a lot over the years, I think, in cooperation with companies like SAP and Microsoft and so forth, to promote the cause of neurodiversity employment. He's working with the UN to transform markets to become inclusive for the target is 1 million autistic or neurodivergent persons. And to enable their inclusion in educational systems in local communities. Thorkil is the chairman of Specialisterne Foundation, a World Economic Forum, Schwab Foundation social entrepreneur, and an Ashoka Globalizer Fellow, honored with the Autism Prize by Autism Denmark, the IT Prize by Danish IT Industry, named European of the Week by ARTE, Brave Thinkers by The Atlantic Magazine, and Intelligent Optimists by Ode Magazine. Currently chairing Denmark's efforts on corporate responsibility and sustainable development goals from 2018, I guess not currently then, and also the author of a number of important papers. Let's see, Moish is joining us as well. Moish is the founder and executive chairman of a company called JoyDew. I've mentioned JoyDew already, Moish. And the way I described it, I think earlier, is you are one of a number of very impressive companies that are working on what I think of as the problem of dipping deeper into the spectrum, which means enlarging the number of people that we can impact by developing special approaches and techniques that allow the activation of talents of people who historically haven't been seriously considered as employable. And we look forward to hearing from Moish about that. He's also got a distinguished business background. He's currently the chairman and managing director of Syntelligent Holding, a company that finances global projects to build next generation life models. He's the founder of Skilla, a software company that provided a global product launch for biopharmaceutical companies, and is the proud father of 2 wonderful boys with autism. And then, like I said, just randomly here on my screen, Jose Velasco is program director in business process intelligence at SAP, and he's an Autism at Work ambassador. But from 2014 through 2020, Jose led the SAP Autism at Work program at SAP. His 30-year information technology career spans private and public sectors, companies ranging from startups to Fortune 50 enterprises. During his tenure of 23 years at SAP, he's occupied a lot of different organizations. He's been a panelist at the United Nations World Autism Awareness Day, testified before the US Congress on the global challenge of autism, and coordinated on the topic with corporate social innovation at the World Economic Forum. Jose and his team have been featured in more than 1,800 publications, including the Wall Street Journal, CBS Sunday Morning, NBC, Fox, Inc. magazine, Forbes, and others. He also launched the Autism at Work Summit, which is a conference series that has been happening annually and now in many places, I think, around the world geographically. It's not just in one geography anymore. It's happening across the world. So what I've suggested that we would do for the panel, to the panelists, is maybe ask them to each make an opening statement, and then we can just have a general discussion, perhaps of some of the issues that I know there were some hands up when I started with the introduction, so we can circle back to those. And again, I'm now going to go, I've closed all of my bio documents, so I'll go in the order that people are randomly chosen by Zoom on my screen. And maybe this is the opposite order, almost. Anyway, Jose, you're at the top right of my screen. Do you want to start off here?
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe I can share a little bit of background about the Autism Network program, a little bit of history, motivation, and just a little bit more detail and color to the program. So in 2013, our senior executives at SAP stood obviously with our friend Thorkil Sonne, stood in front of an audience at Sapphire, which is our marquee event for customers. There may have been 15,000 customers that learned about the launch of a program that we call Autism Network. From a personal perspective, I was vice president of products at the time. I did not have a participation in the program. I became involved in it when I heard about it. I have 2 adult children on the autism spectrum, and we were going through a transition period where we did not know what's going to be on the other end of high school for them. And my wife and I were really, really concerned about their future and what would happen when we were no longer here. So when this announcement came up, I raised my hand and I reached out directly to our Chief Diversity Officer, Anka Wittenberg, and to Thorkil Sonne, and said, I would like to pitch in and see if I can help in some capacity to this program. And I joined as a volunteer first, and as oftentimes happens in life, your mission finds you, not you find your mission. And I became engaged with the program on a full-time basis. So what started as a 6-month volunteering gig really ended up being, as Rob said, a 6-year participation on a full-time basis with the support of our senior executives at SAP. So I had an opportunity to transition over to a completely new field. This was done in 2013. In 2019, I got a knock on the door and saying, you were going to be gone for 6 months. It's been 6 years. Any way that you can come back and support us on the business side again? So there was a transition back, but I continue to support the program as Autism Network ambassador. The program today exists in 16 countries. It employs approximately 225 people. Over the life of the program, we have provided more than 600 opportunities for autistic individuals, ranging from high school enterprise exposure opportunities to internships, contractors, apprenticeships, full and part-time employment, again, in 16 countries. Today, we have approximately 20 different types of positions where we employ individuals on the autism spectrum. They range from individuals who are in human resources department, folks that are graphic designers, all the way to people that are designing and supporting the creation of the next generation of technology products for SAP. The diversity within the autism spectrum present at SAP is vast. We have approximately 18% of women on the autism spectrum are representing the program. And in age, we have individuals that are anywhere between early 20s to 60 plus years old. So that's a little bit about the program. Happy to be here. Thanks for the invitation, Rob.
Great to have you here, Jose. Next on my screen is Thorkil. So you're up, Thorkil.
Thanks, Rob. Great to see you again, Jose and Moish and Rob as well. Like Jose and Moish, I also have an autistic child. He's now a young man, and he made me a social entrepreneur, because the more I learned about autism after he was diagnosed, the more unfair I thought the world is to those who are not typical in the labor market. Now we have a term for it, neurodiverse or divergent. So I started Specialisterne, which is Danish for the specialists, back in Denmark in 2004. The purpose is to make room for those who are not generalists, but specialists in the labor market, with a vision of a world where people are given equal opportunities in the labor market. It resonated, and I received emails from people in more than 100 countries And when parents or other family members contact me, I cannot say no. When they ask for my help, I can say, be patient. And in 2008, I founded a non-profit, Specialisterne Foundation, and set a goal of 1 million jobs. And by 2030. And as Rob mentioned, we are associated with the UN. So this is very much a Sustainable Development Goal 8 initiative in the framework of Sustainable Development Goal 17, Partnership for the Goals. Number 8 is decent work and economic growth. And this is exactly where we have to find the balance between the well-being of the individual and the well-being of the companies they're working for. We are now in 13 countries and operating in about 30 countries with companies like SAP. We've been working with SAP throughout the world, I think in very many places, but also very many other companies. Specialisterne Foundation, in the statutes, autism is not mentioned. We had, at that time in 2008, tried to describe what today is defined as neurodivergent persons. So those with a profile like autistic people who can benefit from us breaking down the barriers based on creating workplaces where autistic people thrive. We believe that places where autistic people thrive will be good places to work for people who have similar challenges, but also people who don't have challenges. Both neurotypical and neurodivergent people will thrive better. We have experience in a lot of job roles, from cybersecurity to pig farming. And pig farming is actually one of those that I'm most proud of. We find the interest and motivation from autistic people. Very many are like animals, like to be and work with animals, but have not seen that as a career opportunity. Well, now there's one in pig farming as an example. So we're trying to find the strengths and motivation and become aware of where they need support. And then our main effort is really to create environments where autistic people and everyone else can thrive better.
Very good. Thank you, Thorkil. And Moish, wonder if you could talk to us a bit about what you do there at JoyDew.
So, good morning, everyone. From the cold, freezing New Jersey. Thank you, Rob, for inviting me. And if I can take a moment before I start to talk about JoyDew, I do want to give a big thank you for a very special person, Thorkil. I met Thorkil in a small cafe in Berlin a while ago, and that was the first time that I started to see a clear direction into what we have to do. And Thorkil, I didn't have a lot of chances to thank you, but I really, really thank you, and I think that you are the pioneer and the one that paved the way to a lot of us. So thank you.
Thanks so much, Moish. Thanks.
I'm the CEO and founder of JoyDew. Autism, we call ourselves Autism 2.0 company. And by Autism 2.0, we try to define a new paradigm, which has a few very important characteristics. Number one, we presume competence. So we believe that anyone on the spectrum do have some kind of strengths, and when you find the strengths, you can develop it and you can get this person to be part of the workforce and part of the community. The second is we're looking in a spectrum in a different way than what I call Autism 1.0, which is low functioning to high functioning. We look into it as multiple spectrums, that any person can be very strong, 1, 2, or 3 of those, and less strong on the others. The third one is we're taking people from all across the spectrum, and I would say that according to the numbers that we see in US, between 50 to 60% are people on the spectrum that do not speak. About other 20% are one that have some kind of language, and then there are 20% that do have the full ability to speak, but don't always speak about what you expect them to speak. And the approach that we took is to get all of these people together, looking to their strengths. We developed a tool that allow us to identify strengths and attach these strengths to what we call the 21st century type of jobs. And then we start to train them. Our model is different. We are providing, beside job training, we provide academic enrichment as well as what we call business social. And we are training as well as employing the people that come to us. And we provide the services to different companies. We are young, we are only 4 years old, social startup, and we focus right now on 5 different jobs. One is radiology early detection of breast cancer, which we're working with major medical center in the US. Second one is pattern recognition, which we apply to different type of jobs. Third one is big data integration. Fourth one is content management. And the fifth is robotics. All the things that we do is technology and allow to be delivered virtually. Having a community of people on the spectrum that coming from different background with different type of skill and sets become to be the one most important things that give us and give our, we call them members, because sometimes they're students, sometimes they're employees, give them a community of their own. And when they have community of their own, we see a major opportunity to tap into untapped talent that can bring very high results in multiple kind of jobs.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you, Moish. I think at this point, I know there were some hands before, so I think, we've got a good, I don't know, half hour or so here, where if there are things people are interested in, you could ask a question. I, of course, have a question or two if no one wants to ask a question, but I'd rather go with yours.
Well, first of all, thank you all so much for those introductions. And without trying to put you on the spot, but I remember, Gregory, you had your hand up before Rob went into introductions. Gregory, are you there?
Is that for me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much. So, I guess thank you very much for that. And there's been, to be honest, there's been a million things that you've mentioned during your sort of discussions that have resonated with me. Like, I'm somebody who interviews like appallingly, and I just got a job with the civil service after having about 25 failed interviews because with the same. It was like a real star analysis structured interview, which is really terrible for like my ADHD. But I guess I mean, it's a really difficult one because I think there's so much variability within sort of ADHD, autism, dyslexia, and stuff like that. And I started at the same time with a colleague who also has ADHD, and we are literally poles apart. They're quite impulsive, whereas I'm quite, I guess, to a certain extent regulated. But I think what I have noticed over time is that as my awareness has increased, probably so has my introversion, just because I'm afraid to probably say what it is that I want to into like maybe formulated the right words, and if I do come out and say something, then it's I'll probably be thinking about it for about 2 or 3 days later, thinking, oh God, did I like make a complete like tool of myself? And I'm just wondering, like, how much, in that self-awareness journey that needs to be, I guess, sort of taken place, does there also need to be kind of a bit of like positive kind of reaffirmation about like just trying to let things go rather than ruminate them? But at the same time, with that I guess that person who was quite direct in their communication, how others can kind of maybe accept that as part of the process. I mean, I don't really know if any of that makes sense, but I don't know. I just think it's a really complicated area. I think from getting the best out of somebody, but also and allowing them to be their best self, but facilitating somebody on that journey.
Someone from the panel?
I'd like to add something. Thank you for sharing, Gregory. I can relate to your experience. I remember my first job. I must have applied to about 70 jobs. And it was in the painful days when we read the newspaper and we cut things with scissors. And we selected the jobs that we wanted to apply to, and we sent the paper resume or faxed it, right? And then waited until somebody responded. And it happened to me. I remember when we had the savings and loans crisis in Austin, in the state of Texas where I live. And rejection was really bad. But then, I got a job and I got started, and things worked out really, really great after that. But one of my colleagues from the autism spectrum came to me and said, I applied for 50 jobs and I got rejected. And then it kind of clicked with my own experience, and I started checking with other people, neurotypical or not, that what was their experience. And a lot of them actually went through, applying for 30 or 40 jobs before they got their first job. So there's an element of human experience here, I think, that is fairly common. But this doesn't negate the fact that people that are neurodivergent have an even more difficult time in getting to the job. As far as your experience with ruminating things for 2 or 3 days, check. I consider myself neurodivergent, and I always go through that as I should have not said that. When I am in an event like this and I say something, I could have said this other thing instead. So that's part of a certain, level of normalcy, I would say, or typicality, I guess, that a lot of us go through. Okay. Do I have a technique for maybe mitigating that? Personally, I just think to myself, I'll do it better next time. Okay. okay? But colleagues of mine that are on the spectrum also have told me that they ruminate a lot on these things and have a lot of moments where anxiety creeps up, okay? And then they ask for the same thing. Is there a technique there to mitigate that anxiety? And that's when we, refer them to somebody that can help them, a professional with more detail. But again, thanks for the question, Greg, and I hope that the answer helps a little bit.
Yeah, thank you.
And if I may comment, Gregory, you are left with a problem that is not really yours, and that we have to change, because the traditional recruitment process doesn't really work. Here in Denmark, it's well known that the traditional recruitment talks and interviews at different layers does not work. And if you want to know how it should be, then read Rob Austin's article about the Dandelion Principle in MIT Sloan Management Magazine, because we need to change the environment where these interviews take place if we want interviews. What we're doing right now in the city where I live in Denmark is we have recruited 10 companies through Denmark's largest chambers of commerce who wants to work with us to find new ways to fill the gap between all the vacant jobs and all the people who want a job but cannot get it because the recruitment process is broken. We are teaching inclusion agents from these companies of how to manage and communicate with neurodivergent persons. We have 4 values that we use throughout the Specialisterne. First is respect, and it means that you have to respect that people are different. You cannot anticipate that everyone can follow your humor or logic or something, but don't impose your own problem to the one you're interviewing. You have to find a way where the interview is respectful, it's accommodating. I also know of autistic people who would rather go to the dentist than go to a job interview. And I can hardly think of anything more scaring than going to the dentist. And it should not be so. So what we are doing is we are teaching them the 4 values: respect, accommodation, make sure that people are in their comfort zone. Otherwise, you won't really get to know them. Set expectations clearly. Make sure if they have questions or concerns that they can address them. But you really should find a way to make people show instead of tell what they're good at. And that will also work better with non-verbal persons. And I'm sure Moish has a lot of experience in this field. But very many job interviews is based on a job description, which is a snapshot wish list from someone, some situation a month ago before it started all the formal processes in a big company to be approved all over the place. And this is not how you should recruit. You should recruit on finding the kind of profiles, realize that you need a diverse team to manage all the situations that can occur in a knowledge-based market economy. And Rob can talk about 2 hours of what is the need in a knowledge-based global market economy. It's a problem if everything is the same. So why are your recruitment processes targeted on someone who are the same as the ones you hired last time? So we prefer not to have job interviews at all. we ask the employers to trust our experience on finding the best possible neurodivergent persons for the job and build the comfort zone. And when we have when we believe that the match is right, then we introduce the employer in a matching meeting. And if they also agree that this is right, then we'll start the onboarding. But before that, they would have gone through training of how to communicate and manage neurodivergent persons, because it should not be your problem, Gregory. It is the employer's problem.
We look on the world and we see the reality that you see, Gregory. You have to go through a lot of barriers when you look for a job. So we took a very different approach. And the approach that we took is that people that coming to us going to be employed by us. And by doing that, we overcome all of the HR issues and other issues that exist within working in a company. So someone coming to us is working within the community that they feel comfortable to. They're doing the job. They're doing the job with us. They're doing the job with the friends. And they don't need to go through too much of a training in how to be someone else. They just can be themselves. Someone that come to our company, we're not interviewing. We actually, 75% of our criteria to accept someone to our program is we interview his parents or guardians. And the criteria for us is that the parent or guardian believe in this individual. And if they do, we take them, because we believe that each one of them will have some kind of skills that he can contribute to the community that we create, and that will create much better productivities and accuracy within the job. So yes, I know that there are people that want to work in a job place, not working in a place like with us. And I think that one thing that is very, very important for all of us to think forward is that there need to be multiple type of employment models that enable people to choose how to go into it. Some of the numbers that we see that, and just like talking about numbers, the numbers in the world of autism are very scattered, and it's very hard to find like a very good number. But clearly we see that only about 10% of people on the spectrum are employed, and the average employment time is 6 months. Not for 6 months, for one reason or the other. And mostly, as Thorkil said, because of the employer, not because of the individual. They have to leave the place and they have to go to someone else. And that's the reason that we said, okay, we create a place for them. And that place that you can be yourself. And yes, we have the values, and Thorkil, number one value is exactly as yours, respect. They have to respect each other. They have to respect the place. But again, what we see that with people on the middle of the spectrum that still need guardianship or parents, the number one thing is, do the parents or the guardians believe in them? because they have to get exactly the same message that we're sending them, that we believe in you. We think that the sky is the limit. You can do everything. It's up to you. We're going to be facilitated. We're going to help you, but it's up to you, and you have to go and do it. They have to get the same message at home. And I would say that the challenge that we see is that there are a very big group of families that, for one reason or the other, that I don't know and I don't want to get into it, don't believe in the kids. And that creates another challenge. So beside the challenge of like getting into a job in a company, you have a challenge when you're coming back home or you're coming back to the place that you live, and you get very different messaging. The solution for that, in my mind, as I said, is develop as many possible employment models. It will take time to the corporate to understand it. I think the corporate today are aware that there is a lot of talent within people on the spectrum, but they have a challenge how to change the culture internally and get to the point that they can actually employ people. It will happen, I believe, but it will take time, a lot of time. And that's the reason that we do different type of model. But again, I want to say, it is not that I'm promoting only this model. I'm promoting multiple employment models, and any model that work supposed to be available. So I believe in choices.
Thank you.
Thank you so much to all three of you for these really insightful answers. Yeah, who would like to go next? Well, I know that Juana has definitely has a question. Shall we hand over to you, Juana?
Yes, I thank you so much for sharing. I'm like Annika, one of the people that have taught the Specialisterne case. So this is a wish come true. Thank you, Rob, for bringing Thorkil to us today. Thank you so much. It is my closing case this year as well in the social enterprise class. I have been a fan of the dandelion model, and I think of it as a pivot in the teaching and learning experience in my own classes, because it is a model of stigma reversal. And we as academics are just beginning to see research and models on how we can identify the layers of stigmas and reverse them. But the dandelion model does that so seamlessly and so gently and universally. And it's so translatable in my own experience to any disability. So my first question, I do promise I have more questions if the group allows me, but the first question is, as we push on this frontier of new abilities, of normalization, of integration, of professionalizations of multiple disabilities, as we are coming out of the pandemic, and it's not only 1 in 5 individuals, but many of us start identifying with multiple mental health challenges, as many employers struggle to navigate this new frontier of work. What can we translate from your respective experiences with bypassing stigma, reversing stigma, changing frames, changing mindsets, that you feel it's most poignantly important at this moment in our classrooms, in our workplaces, in our lives?
Can I take a shot? So I agree with you that stigma is one of the major challenges that we have to overcome. And it's difficult to get over stigma. And there are different ways that need to be done in order to overcome the stigma. But the most important thing is that we understand where stigma comes from, why it comes from, and then try to address it in an impactable way. The way that we overcome the stigma is that, again, we create a community of their own. So there is no stigma. They're friends, they're working together, they're learning together. Between themselves, there is no stigma. But the stigma exists outside. And the stigma is going back even to the parents. And it's going to a lot of establishments, all the establishments, schools, service providers, etc. I think that one thing that is pivot to change is the academia view on autism. And forgive me that I'm getting back on Europe. There is too much and too many academia papers, research, whatever you want to call, that telling us and telling our kids why they're not worth it. And just think about it, that, meaning at least in the US, all the agencies that working with the people on the spectrum, they call themselves, they have 2 Ds in the name already, because they're connected between development disorder and intellectual disabilities. And that by itself, it's stigma. Another stigma that's coming from academia is about behaviorism. That people on spectrum come with behavior. That is not true. If you get them to communicate and you accept their body language, which I think that they have different body language that we have, you're going to reduce a lot of the issues that someone else tried to fix. So why do you want to fix something that not broken into it? In all, I think that if we can somehow get people from academia to look into this issue and stop talking about what we know that it's not working and it's not really the truth about this individual, that will be a very important step. And the thing that I like about this panel and working with Rob is that this is the first time that actually I'm working with someone in academia that comes to business school and not the psychology. That they tell me all the time, okay, no, they have social problem, or they do different type of movement and we have to fix it. And all the behaviorism become to be like one of the largest business in the world, getting people to work with ABA to change them, to change their identity. So we have to accept the identity, and the academia need to be getting into it. Now, the issue over here, in my mind, is money. Because the stigma is good for people that are making money. The government pay for these kids. The government will pay for this for all the life. And there are people that said, okay, this is a great business. I will just warehouse them someplace, get money from the government. So why do I want to change the stigma? I want to keep them the way that they are. So the academia is the most important place that need to change into it. And tell you the truth, I'm trying, I'm meeting with a lot of them, and there is very big gap between reality and between what come out through the academia. What we can do as the one that create employment is try to work together and work and find the right partner in the academia so we actually can put good science out there and start to work on the real issues, rather than to figure out that if someone is scheming, this is not good, and you have to fix it. So again, I think that as Thorkil said, it's not your issue, it is the issue of the corporate. It's exactly the same over here. The stigma coming from the other people. And we have to find a way to do it. The way that I see it on our model, we have to prove to the corporate that the talent that we bring them is getting them a lot of value. And by showing the value, they're going to start to look on this differently. And truthfully, I try to stay away from the academia and from all the different type of argument that's going about what are these people and what are they doing.
If I may, Rob, thanks. First of all, Moish, thanks so much. We could talk for an hour. We should meet again in Berlin or somewhere, Moish. But and thanks so much, Joanna, for referring to the dandelion. And I actually think if we talk more about dandelions and about disorders and disabilities, that would help. Because the point of the dandelion is the question, is this a weed or is this an herb? And for those who don't know much, it's a weed, probably, for garden owners. But for people who know how to appreciate the value of plants, or it's a herb, and you can make a living out of growing it as a farmer. But the very strong message is that the answer lies in each of us. It is us who decide, is this an herb or is this a weed? Because in the right settings, it is an herb. In the wrong settings, it's a weed. But we can only get access to the virtues if we treat it as an herb. And I think dandelions are known around the world, and we are getting into the campaign season where dandelions are blooming and seeds are spreading. And if we can ask everyone, go around showing dandelions and ask people, is this an herb or is this a weed? And then start a discussion about the population that we care for. On that basis, that would help. Another thing is we have to play more, because when you're playing, you are forgetting about the barriers. You are in your zone, and you can do things with others that you cannot do if you're not comfortable. And we have been working with the Lego Foundation for a number of years to promote inclusion and learning through play. And I can tell you it works. And we have to get away from all the stigmas of many families or parents may feel ashamed if they have a family with members who may have autism spectrum disorder in combination with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, and maybe obsessive compulsive disorder on top of that. It can scare the hell out of people, but you can also play. And if you play, then you know what this individual can do when the individual is in the comfort zone, and then everyone can be proud again. So play is important. But I think the way to reach the 1 million job that I need to figure out how to do before I can retire. My deadline is set at 2030, where the SDGs will be evaluated. We have to really use the power of the grassroots. You see some parents here in the panel, and you can see what we have done. We are just, could you say, ordinary parents. we we have not studied for this, but our kids have made us social entrepreneurs or social entrepreneurs or whatever you can call it. And we have really made our mark in where we work. And if there are 2% of the population that may be autistic, then each have 2 parents and maybe siblings and cousins and uncles and neighbors. And wow, probably most of the world's population would respond positively if you came to them and asked for them to engage in this and tell them to play, tell them about the dandelion, tell them about, whatever. But I think to reach the potential here, we need to combine. I think the initial question before we started was, how do you combine this emotional thing with the professional thing? That is actually all you who study. Please figure that out. How do you combine the heart and the brain, the emotions, the professional skills?
Let me add here on a perspective. You started, I think, or the emphasis was on bias. Let me share with you an experience that I had at SAP when we first launched the program in 2014 in the United States. We were hiring our first 5 autistic colleagues. Thorkil and I were working very, very closely in making sure that the program got off the ground very, very well in New Townsburg, Pennsylvania. We were so excited about what was happening. And I remember that as part of the support circle that we created for employees on the autism spectrum, we had a number of different roles. One was, of course, the manager. We had a team buddy, somebody that would work with our colleagues on the spectrum in the day-to-day activities. Not too different than when you and I had our first jobs, right? Telling us how to do the job, right? And then there was a mentor. Okay, the mentor role was designed not to be somebody who was inside of the team. It was somebody who was from the SAP community, but mentor would be a friend. Basically, that's what it would be. Somebody who had maybe tenure at SAP, that was a networker, somebody that could connect our colleagues in the spectrum, that could maybe go to lunch with them, etc. Establishing those relationships, right? So we had a call at the very beginning to announce the program, and that was my first surprise. My first surprise was when we had sent out an email to about 18,000 employees, and I thought that we would have maybe 20, 30, 40 people that would join the call, learning about autism at work and what this program was about. The very first call, we had 180 people join in. Okay. And I was really, really surprised. The second surprise was when in that same call, I took an opportunity to ask for mentors, because I thought, if I can get maybe for the 5 first colleagues, maybe 2 mentors that we can split them and one person may mentor 2 people, that would be great. At the end of that call, we ended up with 28 volunteers, out of which 90% of them had no experience whatsoever or had never met an autistic person before. So the element of bias, in my opinion, is one that in some cases, is not 100% understood, to be honest. I think that there is such a strong willingness from people to help other people that sometimes it's underrated. And I think that, to Thorkil's point, we need to tap into people's well-being in the community, the power of community, to make these things work. Okay. I see the issues of the adoption of these things in a more pragmatic way, in a more, what I would call the issue of systemization. Okay, let me give you an example. If you have 100, well, I'm going to step back by saying that I've talked to a lot of companies over the last 6 years, hundreds of companies, and we have shared experiences with many, many companies of the caliber of Microsoft, all the way to car washes, all the way to, financial sector, non-financial sector, IT, et cetera, companies. And in those conversations, what I have found is that there gets to be a point in the life of these programs, because that's another important thing to highlight, that these are initiated as programs in companies, okay? And programs are agents of change of something bigger in a corporation. They are meant to change the processes and the best practices, but they are not meant to be permanent fixtures necessarily in companies. So if I look at an autism hiring program, I don't see it necessarily as a permanent fixture. The objective would be for it to disappear and for the practices to be embedded in the DNA of the company and to become durable and sustainable practices, because one day Jose and Thorkil and Mosh will retire, and if we are not there, maybe if we didn't create the right practices, then things will fall apart. Okay, we need to be able to embed these things in systems. Okay, and that's not, to Moish's point, something that can happen overnight. This needs time. Transformation needs time. These are not necessarily diversity and inclusion efforts necessarily or exclusively. In my opinion, they are business transformation programs. Okay, and we transform the mentality of a lot of people along the way. Going to your point, Juana, earlier, we need to transform the points in the perspectives of people, even for those that may have a bias on mental health and other situations, to make it a normal in the organization. And that's one of the great products of programs like Autism at Work. We have been able to make some great discoveries, but let's get, I guess, a little bit on the pragmatic side, on the systemizing side. If I have 100 employees that are on the autism spectrum, neurodivergent, and at the very beginning of the call, we were talking about the sustainability. Rob was talking about how often do you do conversations with your colleagues. Let's assume for a moment that you have 1 hour of conversation per employee, okay, per month. 1 hour. It's really not a whole lot, okay? If you have 100 employees, that's 100 hours. And if you have an external individual organization that is supporting you in those conversations, you start running the numbers, and if they charge you $150 an hour, then at the end of the day, it's going to be $180,000 just to talk 1 hour per month to one employee. It doesn't solve any job coaching issues. It doesn't address any challenges that people may have. Okay. The issue that I see is that if you compartmentalize from a cost perspective, and again, this is a very pragmatic view on the implementation of these programs, you start showing up in somebody's Excel spreadsheet the more that you scale the program. So the problem with today's programs is that they have a very limited level of scalability and sustainability over the long term. The only way to mitigate this sustainability and normalization of such programs in companies, to transform the DNA of the company, if you are able to lift and shift the practices that you created inside of the program and transfer them to the run, maintain parts of the organization. That's the heavy lifting. This example that I was giving you about the cost associated with 100 employees is completely unfair, because it only targets the colleagues that are on the autism spectrum or that are neurodivergent. But the reality is that I bet you $1 that a lot of people that are not neurodivergent would also need to have those conversations as well. How things are going for you, right? The minute that we lift and shift that practice from the Autism at Work program, which is a great lesson learned there, and normalize it across the entire organization, it's going to cost you $4 per employee per year. And that's how the systems work today, where you have benefits organizations that buy programs like this. So what we need to do is think in terms of how do we lift these practices where we learn so much about accommodating for human, okay, in the organization. How do we take them and how do we transfer them to those organizations that can scale them and sustain them? I think that when that happens, and I think it is happening, by the way, we're going to be able to see a boom, a real boom, because the support structures that allow for the scalability of these things, that allow for many people that don't have a diagnosis to tap into those services, by consumption of the very services that are offered, are going to say, oh my gosh, we're really meeting a need of our employee population.
All right. Well, I think I want to thank our panelists. I think we're at the end of our time. Jose, I love this last comment, because I think that's the natural focus that we have in places like business schools, right? We want to figure out how this systematizes, how it works, how it, and one of the things I've heard repeatedly in other companies is, many companies is, if it doesn't make sense from a practical standpoint, then when we have a recession or whatever, it'll lose support, and we don't want that to happen. So that's a very important dimension. One of the things we said at the very end, Oana told me when we talked about this session, is that we should end with a call to action. And although I did not orchestrate that at all, I think that's exactly what we've just seen. So I want to thank Moish, Thorkil, and Jose each for spending the last few minutes telling us what we still need to do to realize this vision of opportunity for everyone. There's Moish, you said it. There's skill. Everybody has something to offer, and you all weren't here when I said it at the beginning, but the flip side of that, in my view, is the world needs all the help it can get. Right? It needs all the talent that we can access. So, anyway, I want to thank you all. And thanks to everybody who's joined us for this panel as well. So back over to Annika and Oana.
We thank you so much, Moish, Jose, Thorkil, but especially Rob, for bringing you all three to us today, for having such an inspiring conversation. The room, the community, the Spring Institute, and the greater vision of all of us coming together is to change the frame so that we can see the abilities and we can see the possibilities in the future. We thank you for your time on a Saturday. We thank you for your continued inspiration. And we cannot wait to continue this conversation. Rob will be guest hosting one of the days of the Spring Institute at Ivy on March 25th. So the conversation will continue to bloom, inspire, and mentor the next generation of scholars working in this area and teachers working in this area. Thank you all so very much. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.